All right, good peoples. Happy Tuesday evening here. Let me get out Defiance. I hadn't done a Defiance for a couple of weeks, as most of you know that own them, and anybody that's watching this that doesn't. They changed their methodology for the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500. You see them here: Qqqy, Wte, and their Russell 2000, which is Iwmy. Now, these funds existed for over a year. You can see the launch dates back in September 28, and then November 1 of last year. What they did was a little bit of a copycat, but I mean, hey, when something's working and you see a competitor, they entered the space. So they're already in the space, they just weren't a weekly payer, right? And since Roundhill really got very popular, people loved the weekly pay. Again, to me, it doesn't make much difference, but for those of you that want the income, or you take the income and you invest in something else, having it sooner is better, right? I mean, in theory, if you had a job and they just handed you the money every day, but as we all know, it's electronic deposit, so if it's every 2 weeks, whatever, but it matters to people. Again, for me, I never do anything based on a weekly, right? I do it with a lot of other analysis, but to each his own. I think it's a good move for Defiance. I like the Defiance funds in a lot of ways. I don't like their NAV reduction, so it'll be interesting to see if they get better doing it on the weekly, which means they're going to do daily sells and daily options to generate the weekly income, which they can do on these indexes. The reason that these funds that are single stocks, right, that single stock's not an index, then you can't really do it because there aren't daily options. Ultimately, they may well be. So anyway, let's jump in here and get this together. So there's really two parts to this analysis. So let me take you through the simple one first. So even within the Defiance family of funds, these three now are weekly, right? The essentially the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500, and the Russell 2000 index. These are the symbols. They now pay weekly. Okay, they still have monthly payers, and they have thematics, they have income, and they have some leverage funds. I love the fact that, oh, by the way, anybody that wanted to know, they're actually two different funds, but their announcement on November or October 29, Bruce, get with the month. They've announced that they're moving the leverage up on their SMST and their MSTX. So their MSTX is in fact MicroStrategy. So I love that. I mean, I love MicroStrategy. I love where Bitcoin is. We'll see it's up at 73. If it can get through 74, I suspect that it's very likely at the 73 level. It may retrace back to the 69 tier, just getting some people that get out, and then it needs to go through 74. That's the breakout. That's the previous high. And then it needs to confirm, and I imagine it will start, if it's going to run now, then that starts the 75, 76. There may be one pullback, right, back to test 74, and then off and running if this is the time. I don't know. It sure looks bullish, and with the election, but then again, we could also get a sell-off in the market. There's just so many factors. If you watch my Roundhill, I mean, we've got earnings on 6 of the 7, Mag 7 this week alone. And then we have the election next Tuesday. Then we have the FOMC interest rate decision on rate cuts or not the following day on Wednesday. We probably don't even know who the winner of the election, and we may know late Tuesday evening we'll see. So anyway, you got a lot of volatility. So trying to predict, I don't really do that much. Sometimes I'll go out and give you my opinion and my cycle work on what that's doing. All right, back to these three guys. So down here, I told you what the pay is. So this should reflect 29 here. Okay, the closing price. So this is the current distributions for these three funds now that they're weekly. So they would have paid on 10/9, 10/16, 10/23. They don't pay, they declare. Declare on, and the reason I'm not showing 10/30 is we want to get the price on 10/29, but the distribution is in effect on the 30th. So as a reminder, okay, all of you guys, that this is now, okay, the declaration for 10/30. So you must buy on 10/30 to receive this, right? So ex-dividend will in fact be 10/31 and pay date will be 11/1. I should clean this up. Okay. So what happened here, whoops. I did a couple things. I had this as monthly for a long time, so I'm showing you what the weekly payer is. Then I'm adding the last 4 weeks together when I go out here to my data, and then I plug it in as if it's a monthly payment, right? So Qqqy had 4 weekly distributions, so it was $1.15. Wdte had 4 distributions, $1.08. The Russell, IWMY, had 138. So I'm showing you the yield based on the current price, okay? So if you want these things, you must buy on Wednesday. Buying on Halloween, October 31st, it trades without, and that is where you see the payment come out, okay? So don't get confused here. This is what they're paying on Friday on 11/1. This is what you'll receive if you own these funds. This is 4 payments, just to keep it somewhat, if you want to call it, consistent. These, as you guys know, don't declare until 10/31. So possibly tomorrow at night, but will get the amounts for the SPY-T, the USOY on US oil, and the NASDAQ income fund. These are supposed to be more stable, and these are targeted income funds, right? The issue that Defiance has had, and it'll be interesting to see if the weekly helps out, is they've suffered, and let me take you through this. Now, they had a 3-for-1 split, mainly because the NAV erosion was very large. These funds started out at $58, $60, and they did a 3-for-1 reverse split on these a little while ago. So when I initially did this, I made some mistakes in calculating the return, right? You always have that when you have a split. You have to have your accounting stuff. Functionally, a split doesn't do anything. It can change the amount of shares, but then the shares are priced whether it's a reverse or a forward split, right? Reverse is an indication that, the stock is declining and they want to get the stock back to a higher price. So they trade out. When you're doing very well and you're running too high, you want the stock price to come down. So a reverse makes the stock price higher, and a traditional makes a traditional split that's not reverse makes the stock cheaper. Look at MSTR, look at NVIDIA. They both did 10-for-1. They weren't, oftentimes 10-for-1 is a reverse split. you know, a stock was $100 and it went down to $10, right? And they don't want it to get to 5 where they can't trade on the exchange, so they'll do a reverse split. But in the case of MSTR, MicroStrategy, and NVIDIA and many other stocks, they simply want it to be cheaper so that retail, institutional doesn't care if the stock is 1,500, 2,000, right? They're going to invest the amount of money. But for a retail guy, you're saying, hey, I want to buy some NVIDIA, but I don't have, you know, $1,500, $1,600 to buy a single share. So now if I drop the price, you know, I can go buy 7 shares or 6 shares or some amount. All right. So, and what I really like about it is then I can get into options because I need 100 shares, right? When you look at MSTR, NVIDIA, and they're $1,500, $1,700, $1,800, then to buy 100 shares is substantial to do your own options trading, right? But when they come down to 140, 130, something like that, then it's a price of where you can go out and buy 100 shares. It's still a big buy, but now you got some contracts. You know, for me, I want to do my own trading. I was a big yield max guy, letting them manage it. But after watching that for 6 months, I said, no, 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 no. You know, I can do a better job. My active management is a lot better than their active management. I think the issue is still out on whether the spreads are going to be beneficial. I didn't like the $10 spread that they used. So I haven't followed that too much recently because most of you guys know I'm not covering the individual funds on Max. I'm really kind of fed up with them. I'm doing an awful lot of trading in commodities and GDX and GDXJ and the metals and futures and a lot of that. And all you have to do is look at their GDXY and see how horribly they've managed that fund. You got a GDX that's higher than it's ever been, and you have a GDXY that the NAV reduction has hurt you. So I'm not a big fan of that. So when you look at the yields, these are correct, right? So it'll be interesting here to see what these guys in the next day or two actually pay. So I think in summary, guys, that's what I have for you. So here's the payments, here's the yield. This is the monthly summary since I added the 4 payments, right, which you can only do once a month at the end to know. So that's what I got for you on Defiance. So I will start doing Defiance Weekly, and I'll do the Yield Max weeklies, the YMAGs, and the A funds, right? That'll be out in the morning when I get those results for Wednesday on the Yield Max weekly, the YMAX and the YMAG, and the Group A, which Tesla heads up. Okay, guys, that's what I got for you. Again, this is Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. Have a great one. Bye for now.